We need to talk about Demon Slayer, specifically about Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, the brand new feature film that marks the beginning of the end for this mega popular anime series. The 2.5-hour anime adaptation follows the elite members of the Demon Slayer Corps as they fall headfirst into the Muzan-tiverse of Madness, aka the Infinity Castle, which is kinda like if MC Escher designed the Winchester Mystery House, then filled it with nightmarish murder monsters. The first in a planned trilogy to conclude the series, Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, finds our heroes squaring off against the brutal demons of the 12 Kizuki, and their own tortured pasts as they hunt down the Demon King Muzan, presumably for copyright infringement on the King of Pop. Now, let me be crystal clear, I really enjoyed this movie, but while the film is shattering box office records and heart with its many flashbacks, there are two big problems with the movie. Number one, I sat in the second row from the front of my IMAX screening, which was just an insane experience. I can't recommend that at all, but that was really more of a personal failure. Number two is the pacing. Good Lord, we need to talk about the pacing. This was a 2.5-hour movie that felt like a 2.5-hour movie. And I say this as someone who enjoys 2.5-hour movies. So let's talk about it. Join us as we dive back into the pocket dimension of the Infinity Castle to break down our thoughts on this latest chapter in the Demon Slayer saga and talk about how anime needs to evolve if its future does in fact lie on the big screen. Now, whether you're a Demon Slayer, Demon Hunter of the K-pop variety, or whatever was happening in Weapons, this year's box office has been dominated by all manner of supernatural monsters and the people that dispose of them. And we can't get enough. But while Infinity Castle's been mastering the art of money breathing at the box office, there seems to be one common caveat among all of the reviews, many of which center on the film's pacing. IGN's Rafael Montemayor wrote, Demon Slayer Infinity Castle is a movie that feels like an unedited compilation film, a poorly stitched together series of episodes with horrendous pacing and a never-ending series of flashbacks in what is obviously a very incomplete story. Harsh, but fair, I guess. But why those Kenneth Seward Jr. wrote, the film features gorgeous animation, a strong cast, and some of the best action scenes the series has ever produced. Unfortunately, some of these highlights are marred by their condensed plot and poor pacing. And Polygon's Francesco Cacciatore wrote, if I have to judge Infinity Castle as a movie, it has one big issue. Pacing. And I love this one because the word pacing is literally in the URL of the review. So yeah, it's apparently a common refrain. Everyone seems to agree Ufotable went absolutely sicko mode on the animation, but for many people, myself included, the narrative's pacing brings both battles and momentum to a screeching halt. Now, before we get too deep on the subject, we do want to issue a quick spoiler warning for those who haven't yet seen the movie. We're going to be talking about specific spoilers for key details in Infinity Castle. So if you haven't seen it yet, go flashback to a time where you didn't willingly click on this video of your own free will. Jeremy? When it comes to pacing in Infinity Castle, the issue is twofold. Firstly, the film is basically 3 battles that happen back to back to back. It's literally one battle after another. Not that one. Viva la revolution! It's kind of like when you split the party in D&D. These events are happening relatively simultaneously, or so the audience can assume. But rather than being interwoven, they happen one after another for the viewer. But we aren't treated to a non-stop Fury Road style clash between these powerful breathing styles of the Demon Slayer Corps and the terrifying blood demon arts of Muzan's minions. Rather, Demon Slayer, like so much shonen anime, relies heavily on mid-battle flashbacks that give us insight into the rich inner lives of these characters and provide the tragic, beautiful context to give these bloody battles major emotional weight. And before you rush to the comment section, I have been watching anime my entire life. I know overwrought mid-battle monologues are a hallmark of the genre. I love them, especially in shonen anime. But here, they wound up undercutting their impact. All of the flashbacks in Infinity Castle feel meaningful. Shinobu Kocho's doomed attempt to avenge her sister's murder at the hands of the demon Doma, that was a heartbreaking way to open this film, especially how it ends. Zenitsu showed us that time-tested anime lesson that hard work can overcome innate talent when he triumphed over his former brother in thunder-breathing arms, Kaigaku. And it hit that much harder because we had a sense of the deep emotional scars that each of these young men bear. And then we have the final extended flashback of Akaza's backstory. It's a crushing, depressing glimpse into how an angry, alienated young man finally found peace, only to have it ripped away in the cruelest fashion possible. It gave rich new layers to a character best known for turning Rengoku into a human bracelet in the Mugen Train film. Now, unfortunately, it's also the most egregious example of how Infinity Castle's flashbacks work poorly in the context of a feature film. This final extended glimpse into Akaza's backstory takes place right in the middle of a climactic fight nearly 2 hours into the movie. While the flashback itself is incredible and emotionally impactful and filled with more Channing Tatum than you know what to do with if you watch the dub, its place in the structure of the movie grinds the film's momentum to a complete and utter halt. It got to the point where I heard audible laughter in my theater with each successive flashback, and that sucks, especially when it's setting up something so earnest and devastating. And this was also an audience that literally cheered when the Crunchyroll logo came up at the start of the movie, so they were the right people in the right place. But that brings us to the whole root of this issue, which is structure. Because to be clear, the story itself, perfectly fine. The actual substance of material being adapted is not at fault. Rather, the fault lies in how faithfully this film sticks to the manga. Rather than adapting the manga to a more traditional film-like structure, Infinity Castle instead opts to translate a huge chunk of the manga as it was written, approximately 18 chapters or so. And sure, that makes sense if you're looking at it from a traditional anime perspective of adapting for television. Both manga and televised anime function as serialized long-form storytelling spread out for weekly consumption. You can afford to tell more compartmentalized stories because that is how your audience is intended to experience it. Lengthy, mid-fight flashbacks don't feel out of place in this context because you can luxuriate and take the time that you need to bring each of these moments to life. Movies, on the other hand, follow a very different language and style of storytelling. In some cases, this can work out perfectly. I mean, case in point, Demon Slayer's previous theatrical release, Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba Mugen Train. That worked extremely well as a movie, and it felt like a movie. Because in that instance, the film is comprised of an entire arc of the manga that also functions as a satisfying self-contained narrative. And remember, Infinity Castle is the first of 3 movies intended to replace a final season or seasons of the show to close out the Demon Slayer series. The scope of the story is so much larger because it's not self-contained. Each entry needs to build momentum as our heroes race against time in this labyrinthine pocket dimension. And while it might make sense from a purist standpoint to just split the remaining chapters of the manga into 3 roughly equal chunks to adapt into movies, there's a strong argument to be made for taking more creative liberties when it comes to adapting the story. Now, one aspect that makes the Demon Slayer anime arguably superior to the manga is the way in which it's always enhanced the source material's artwork. The anime takes rather broad and minimalist panels and transforms them into breathtaking sequences of animation. They fill in the blanks with artistry and beauty in a way that elevates the story. So why not take the same creative interpretation when it comes to the narrative itself? That's not to suggest drastically changing the core of the material. I mean, God knows, there's enough bad anime filler out there. Rather, Demon Slayer Infinity Castle story could have been remixed in a way that better complemented the medium into which it was adapted. So what if, instead of saving Akaza's backstory until the end of the film, Infinity Castle opened with it and wove it throughout the entire movie? That way, we slowly learn the tragic tale of how a misguided young man looking for peace transformed into one of the bloodthirstiest demons known to man. That would allow Infinity Castle to establish more of a thematic through line before culminating in that epic final fight. Likewise, the film might have also benefited from intercutting these individual stories in a more cohesive way that made the overall structure of the movie build on itself rather than feeling like a series of separate peaks and valleys. Now, none of this is to say that the manga's original structure is bad. It worked well for that medium. But in the context of a feature film, it feels like there are ways the story could have been modified to make for a better theatrical experience, much in the way that a prose novel is rarely a one-to-one adaptation. Now, to cite a more recent example, the Dandadan Evil Eye theatrical release, it was excellent until the very end. It just kind of abruptly rolls credits. And that was a stark reminder it's literally just 3 episodes of the new season stitched together on the big screen. Maybe they would have been better served by adapting the entire Cursed House arc into a movie instead of leaving audiences on tenterhooks. And this idea of being more loosey-goosey with adaptation feels increasingly important because more and more anime movies are getting large-scale theatrical releases. Jujutsu Kaisen 0 made over $160 million worldwide, giving fans a self-contained prequel that expanded on the source material in ways that suited the medium. This October, Chainsaw Man returns after nearly 3 years with a movie adaptation of the Reza arc, and it sounds like it's going to offer a self-contained story that propels the larger narrative forward for an eventual season 2, rather than feeling like it trails off mid-sentence. Now, it won't make Demon Slayer dollars, but its success at the Japanese box office already bodes well for anime fans abroad. But then again, what do I know? Demon Slayer Infinity Castle has made more than $500 million worldwide. Clearly, they're doing something right. We just want them to do it a little bit better. And next time, I'll make sure to move back a few rows because that was deeply unpleasant. When the subtitles jumped to the top of the screen, it was like reading skywriting. Anyway, folks, there you have it. That's the biggest problem I had with Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, apart from not giving us enough Inosuke. But at the end of the day, we love anime, we love seeing it on the big screen, and most of all, we really hope we don't have to wait till 2027 to see Demon Slayer 2 Infinity Castle. But tell us, what do you folks think? Did you enjoy Infinity Castle? Do you agree with our assessment? Can you think of any other anime adaptations that were better than the manga? Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, make sure you stay tuned to Nerdist.com.